have you to conduct a session on PhD supervision, ensuring our students are ready for proposal defense. So I believe this is quite crucial in our institution now, where we are getting more and more PhD students. And I hope for today's session, most of the participants will get something benefit from this. And please feel free. This is I believe this is like an interaction. I hope today's session will be interactive. And without further ado, I will pass this virtual mic to you, Prof. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Hazim. Let me just share my slides first. Hi, can I just check whether my slides are visible? Sorry?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Okay, thank you so much. When I was approached by TLC to do this particular topic in terms of PhD supervision, for a minute, I was actually thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I think many of us have done a PhD supervision and we sort of like go with the flow. But this has actually been a very good experience. This request about doing this session has actually been really good because it also made me reflect in terms of what are the things that I have been doing. Right. So like I mentioned earlier, this is more in terms of sharing. If there are things that you are doing as a supervisor and you think that it will be beneficial to all of us, please do share as I start my presentation. And if you want to stop me at any time to ask or to share, please do that. Yeah. So today, the topic is PhD supervision, ensuring our students are ready for proposal defense. I think one of the things that we as those of us who have played roles as chairmen for proposal defense or examiners, right? Sometimes when we look at what the students have actually presenting, right? And especially when it comes to Q&A, we see our students struggling, meaning that sometimes they're not able to answer the questions, right? Or they're not able to articulate, right? Sometimes, they are like there are some things which are not aligned with what they're doing, right? So you can see the fear in the students, right? I mean, they don't know how to answer, right? They sort of like become tongue-tied. All of those things are happening. So based on this, I think this is a good session, right, for us to all share in terms of how each of us as supervisors would do what we need to do in order to get our students ready for proposal defense. Yeah. So I thought I will start this by if we have a student coming to you with this particular topic, right? So I've actually chosen China simply because a lot of our students, our PhD students actually come from China, right? So, and one of the things that I noticed that is of interest to them is actually technology adoption, things related to technology, digital transformation, right? Those are the things that is of interest to them. So I said, if let's say a student comes to us with this particular topic, technology adoption by family-owned businesses in Jiangxi, China, right? So assuming that this is the first time that you're getting this, meaning the student does not have much research experience. So when we look at this, then most likely, okay, whether it will be possible, right? Students are also supposed to give us a bit of their research proposal. So let's assume that this is a problem statement, right? So what this statement says is, okay, Jiangxi is tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? So their family-owned businesses are the backbone of tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? And then so e-commerce, digital economy participation is key. However, they're saying that family businesses are slow to adopt this. Yeah. So, and then they have actually done the research to say these are some of the factors, right? So if a student comes to us with this problem statement, yeah. So my question to you is, based on the topic and problem statement provided, would you consider supervising this student? So this is a very quick quiz, right? So please, if you can, just take a few minutes, right? Would you consider supervising this student? I mean, is this a student who we can mold and guide in order to complete this particular topic? Are you all able to access the quiz? Is it okay? Hi, Haiza.
No, I thought I want to thumbs up just for the race. Oh, for no problem. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, okay. Are you all able to attempt the quiz? Is that possible?
I cannot, Dr. Shafi.
Oh, yes, huh? Okay. Mm. Okay.
Now you can.
Can? Okay, let me try sharing again, yeah? I'll just most likely just share my whole screen. That'll be easier that way. My apologies. Let me try to do this again. So we have 2 yes, 1 no, and 2 maybe, right? So I go back. Okay, so this is a confession that I'm making, right? The title and problem statement were actually generated by ChatGPT. Yeah. I went to ChatGPT and I said, okay, this is what I want. Give me a title and give me a problem statement, right? And this is what it actually provided me. Yeah. So when I looked at, if you look at what I shared earlier, you will notice that the first paragraph had all of the citations. The second paragraph didn't have any citations. So what I did was I picked up on the citations which was given and I checked, right? And this is what I found, right? These references were given by ChatGPT, and when I searched for the articles, the articles do not exist. We do not have any such articles, right? So, and I think some of us who have been supervising students on a regular basis, okay, we notice this kind of things, yeah? So students come to give us something, it looks okay, it looks presentable, it looks like, you know, something that we can start working with them, right? But many a times, the whole thing is written by ChatGPT, students would cut and paste, right? So I just thought that I will start with this because this is an experience which I thought many of us can relate to, yeah? So with that, what would be the role of supervisors? So I think the first thing that we would need to do is setting expectations, right? So we have got PGRC. PGRC would share with regards to what are the guidelines, what are the timelines in terms of when we need to have our progress reports. Students need to submit their progress reports and so on. But I think it will be good for us as supervisors as well, on the onset, for us to also remind students on this. So this would actually be a support to PGRC to say that, hey, right, these are key things that we are looking at. So this is just not an email which is coming from Dr. Jasmine or PGRC, but it's actually something that we take seriously, right? So emphasizing that is actually important, right? The second one, discussing roles and boundaries in the supervision. So one of the things that I normally do is when the students come to me to share, if they have written out something, when they come to share. So let's say, for example, when they come to me with a proposed problem statement, yeah? So like the problem statement that I showed you earlier. So I will actually get the students, I'll tell them, okay, it's interesting, show me the paper, right? Show me the article. I want to see the specific article, right? And I have had cases where students are caught off guard, right? Then, you know, they will like be scrambling to find for the papers, you know, and then you'll have all sort of excuses which will come out, right? The excuses would range from, oh, I don't have access to my Wi-Fi, I cannot download this paper, right? Oh, I cannot find this paper, right? Oh, okay, I will show you something else. You know, a lot of these things come out. But I think why I do that, and I actually do that for at least the first 2 to 3 months that I see them, because I want to make them understand that if you are doing something, right, if you're going to do this where you're going to use ChatGPT to generate something, right, that's not going to be accepted, right? So in this case, setting expectations, so that means they know when they come to see me the next time, they would need to bring their articles. So automatically they know that, okay, I better be prepared, right? Because I'm going to read it, I'm going to ask questions. Yeah. So I think discussing roles and boundaries in the supervision process is actually important, right? Schedules. So the schedules for supervision actually varies. So for example, in the case of a new student who comes in, the session is actually more regular, meaning I would see the students at least bi-weekly, 2 weeks once, right? I would give the students to do certain things. There will be certain tasks that the students would need to do, yeah? And the students would need to come. But however, once the students, I know the students have already started working on their own, they are actually quite good, I don't see them as frequently, right? So it can be something as once a month, or it can even be twice in a semester or three times in a semester, because by then we as supervisors already know how committed the student is in doing something. Yeah. So I think the setting up of the supervision schedule is actually based on individual students and how we would want to manage that, right? Another thing that I will also do is I will actually create a Google Drive, right? And use the Google Drive. So it's a shared tools, use the Google Drive for progress tracking. So meaning if the students is coming for the first session or the second session, so I said, okay, so this is what we are doing, all right? So for students who are actually more fluent in English, I will actually tell the students, okay, open up a Word document and start typing, right? So as I'm giving my feedback, start typing this feedback in, right, to say what you need to do, what is the concern, right? So the student themselves will be starting to do that. However, if you feel that sometimes if our students are not very fluent, right, and you would want to actually help them a little bit, then what you can actually do is you can actually type. So as we are talking, right, we can actually type it, and then we can actually put this on the Google Drive. So that means there will be meetings that you are tracking. Because I think all of us have got so many things that we are doing, so many hats that we are wearing, right? So, and we have so many students that we are also supervising. So in this case, it actually helps us keep track of what is the advice that we have given students, right? So sometimes students might actually come back and say, no, but you told me to do this the last time, right? And then now you're telling me to do this, right? So which is likely to happen because at that point, A might have been important, but now you're looking at it and think, oh no, this should be B, right? So I think having a progress tracking form actually will be helpful for both the students as well as the supervisor as well. Yeah. In your shared in your Google Drive, you can also actually drop in things like if the student has given a draft, the first draft, right? And you have actually written your comments in the first draft, you can actually put that in, because then when you ask the students to work on something and the student comes back, you're able to compare to see, okay, whether these matters have actually been addressed. Yeah. So these tools actually helps with the tracking as well. Yeah. So one of the things, and this is actually from experience that I've learned, is when you're using a shared tool, it's always good to for us as supervisors to create the Google Drive and then share the link. That means give access in terms of editing, all right? Sometimes it's just viewing, right? So like in terms of Google Drive, I will actually give access to the students in terms of editing as well, okay? Because based on my experience, I've noticed that sometimes when the students are creating, at some point, we might actually lose access to those documents. So just to ensure, as long as you're supervising the student, you want to have access to those documents. So it actually makes more sense for us as supervisors to create that. Yeah. So this is the first big role of the supervisors in terms of setting the expectations. Okay. The second one is refining the research focus. Okay. We notice when student comes to us, right? They actually have got this thing in their mind that this is what I want to do, right? And many a times it will be too broad, right? It might not be feasible, right? Meaning, I was actually a chairman for one student where the student actually wanted to do, so the student actually wanted to conduct 2 surveys, right? One, the first survey the student wanted to conduct with before the customer had experienced the product, right? And then about 2 or 3 months later, the student wanted to reach out to the same customers to actually check how this experience has been. Yeah. I mean, from a research perspective, it's actually wow, because if you're able to track that, right, and get that information, it's actually superb, right? But because at that time I was a chairman and I had actually a serious concern with that, right? Because I was telling, how do you track the same customer? Because those of us who have done a collected survey, right, we know how difficult it is to collect survey, right? The first time itself is so difficult to collect survey. But here you're telling us that you want to collect the survey the first time and collect the survey again from the same customers again, right? And this was actually not like 10 or 20, right? This was like the student was talking about 200 or 300 samples, right? So when students come to you with this kind of things, right? I think it's our role to say, hey, is it feasible? Can it be done? It's good, it's very interesting, but is it feasible, right? Because at the end of the day, our role as supervisors is sort of to rein in, give them the borders in which they can actually work. Yeah. So when a student comes to me for the first time, one of the things that I do is I will see the alignment between the topic, the problem statement, and the research objectives, right? I will ask them, explain to me what's your problem statement, right? I will tell them, tell me how is this linked to your research objectives, yeah? Many times, especially students who are coming in the first time, we would notice that there is actually lack of alignment, right? Honestly, I have never had a student where on the onset, the first time I'm meeting the student has actually got an alignment in all three, right? I have not had that experience, yeah? So I think if there's no alignment, right, I think it's our role for them to have them understand why this alignment is important as well, yeah? And then to show them the process involved in ensuring the alignment is achieved, yeah? So if we look at the three components here, right, the topic tells us the broad area or the theme of the study. The problem statement tells us the justification for doing the research, which identifies the issues or gap. And the research objective is the action the research will take to address that problem. Yeah. One of the things that I have noticed is when it comes to the problem statement, students will talk about A for problem statement, but when it comes to research objectives, they will actually tell you about, oh, I want to look at the relationship between knowledge management and top management behavior. Then I'll ask them. So this is an actual case of a student who came to see me. Then I said, okay, if this is what you want to see, okay, tell me where is the problem statement for this, right? No problem statement, right? So there's always a misalignment. So I think it is important for the students to understand there needs to be an alignment in all of these three. So they are not actually standalones, right? But they are all interlinked and interconnected. So if I were to ask you which one is the most important, okay, since my survey link doesn't seem to work, so I'm going to skip this, yeah? So yes, so the most important thing, I think that we as supervisors would need to work and get aligned. So when it comes to problem statement, it actually takes, in my case, I've noticed it actually takes close to about 1 semester to actually get the students to get their problem statement right? Why is problem statement so important? It gives the reason why the study exists, right? The problem statement is the reason why you have your objectives, your research questions, your methodologies, again, based on your problem statement, right? So simply put, if there is no clear problem, there is no purpose in doing this particular study, and there's no PhD. You don't even have to do your PhD. Yeah. So I think the role of supervisors in this case, I think it's actually very, very crucial that taking that time, especially in getting the problem statement refined. Yeah. So telling the students, look, you have this is a problem statement that you have, right? Asking the students again and again, look, if this is a problem statement, why are you doing this, right? Like one of the things that I do when my students come in is every time when the student comes in, I will say, explain to me your problem statement, right? And initially, it is always students are struggling. Students are struggling because they do not know what is it that they want to do. Yeah. So, but by us asking them repeatedly, right? So every session, especially in the beginning, right, when we want to define the research focus area, every session, that is the starting question. Tell me about your problem statement. Tell me about your problem statement, right? Asking them again, how is this linked to your objective? Tell me how is it linked to your objective? Yeah. Sometimes students, I know sometimes students get very frustrated with me because the other day I had one of my students who had come, right? He had, because previously he has used ChatGTP, right, to use. So I caught him. So after that, he's like, he says, no, really, I have done my work. So I say, yeah, fine. But so from then on, what he does is he'll actually handwritten. Everything is actually handwritten, right? He has written in handwriting, and then he'll bring me pieces of papers and so on, right? So when he comes, so I know that, so I've actually established that, okay, so don't use ChatGPT, or use it in a more effective manner, all right? That message has gone across. Okay, but whenever he comes, so he says, no, I have already got my objective already. I'll tell you my objective, right? So I said, but you don't have a problem statement. How can you have an objective if you don't have a problem statement, right? So it sometimes is actually very frustrating for students as well, because for them is, oh, I already have this, right? Why is she in such a pain? Right? Why can't she just accept it and just move on, right? But I think we as supervisors, that's our role, to be the pain, right? To tell them, right? This is how you need to do it, right? You need to have your problem statement first. Your problem statement is linked to your research objective. That too is important, right? Only then you can actually come up with your topic itself. Yeah. So when student presents their problem statement, we as supervisors need to ask clarifying questions, right? So two key reasons I feel very strongly that this is important. So that means if you ask me in the first instance, in the first 3 months or 6 months of a student's journey with us as supervisor, that means the student is already doing their research methodology, right? So when the students come and see us, I think it is our role to actually get the problem statement. So focus as much time as you need on the problem statement, because once you have gotten the problem statement right, everything else is actually a smooth flow. Yeah. So why is problem statement important? For us as supervisors to understand the research problem, but I think more importantly, for us to let our students see whether they have actually understood what their problem statement is. Okay, because many a times I think students actually forget about their problem statement. Okay, and that is one thing I reiterate with my students. I tell them, right, your problem statement, I will look at your problem statement when I talk about your research objectives, right? When you do your methodology for each one of that research objective, you will have a particular methodology, right? I will come back to your research, your problem statement to ask you that, right? Again, when you go to writing your findings, I will come back again to your problem statement to ask, are you answering this particular question? Because that was the reason why you started writing this PhD in the first place, right? So reiterating to them over and over again until they want to warm it, the message gets across, right? That problem statement is key. Yeah. So, for example, when students come to me with this, so I'm taking back the same example that we started off with, right? So technology adoption in a family-owned business in Jiangxi, China, right? So when they say, so I will sort of go into each one of these, the words that they have. So for example, technology adoption. So I see why is technology adoption a challenge? Okay, so you're saying that means what are some of the problems? Okay, who is affected by this problem? How are they affected by this problem? Yeah. So when you start asking these type of questions, you're forcing your students to also think, right? So what makes this issue worth investigating? All right. So, okay, let's say they have given you data to say, okay, technology adoption is a problem. Okay, but then the question is, why do you need to study this? Right? So let's say, for example, if I'm looking at this, okay, today it was raining very heavily. There is flash floods everywhere in the Klang Valley. Yeah. So if something like that means you say, okay, why is it worth investigating? Yes, because we want to do flood mitigation, right? It's actually bringing the whole that there is traffic all over, people are late for work, productivity is affected. Okay, so there is an issue worth investigating. So I think the students would need to be able to communicate that to us, right? Also ask them. So sometimes when the students come, okay, one of the things I've noticed is they actually say, okay, who's your sample? Students, right? So I said, why students? What is the reason that you want to actually look at students? Because they are looking at how can I easily get the data, right? So I think whenever they say something, so when they say family-owned businesses, okay, so you say, why is it Jiangxi, right? So why is it that this particular province? There's so many provinces in China, right? Okay, so you're looking at tier 2, tier 3, fine. But why this particular province, right? So breaking it down to micro pieces, right? Asking questions from each one of these components. Why technology adoption, right? So even like in terms of, okay, technology adoption, okay, what specifically in technology adoption are you looking at? What type of technology are you looking at, right? E-commerce platform, are you looking at the ERP system, right? What is it that you're focusing on specifically, right? So the more and more we probe and we ask, the clarity starts to, students themselves started, oh yeah, why am I doing that? What is this? Why, right? And they will tend to find the answers. Yeah. So the final test, right? If the student has actually got this right, is when you ask the student. So, and this is a question, again, I ask the student every time, right? Every time for the first 6 months, this is a question I'll ask the student. Can you explain your problem statement to me in one clear sentence, right? If you are able to very clearly say, right, this is my problem statement, right? Then you know the student is already well, in the student's mind, the student actually knows what he or she wants to do. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm a firm believer that problem statement is the key. Getting it right would mean everything else will actually flow through. Yeah. So I'm just going to pause here for a while to ask if there are any questions, any queries. Anyone wants to share your experience so far?
Prof. Sodi, you
Yes.
don't mind, I just share my 5 cents knowledge.
Sure,
okay.
Captain. Go ahead.
Okay. In fact, I have supervised
Mm.
quite number of students, in fact, the undergrad also.
Mm.
So a lot of students, when you ask them to write problem statement, most of them focus on the independent variable on it as a problem. In fact, we should tell them it's not the IV as the problem, it's the
Yes.
motivation of the study.
Yes.
Because they look at the problem statement, they think it's the problem of the DV, the the factor that impact the DV, So most of the problem statement, they focus on why we want to study IV,
Yes.
Suppose that when we explain to them, it's the motivation of the study, then they have a clear mind of it, How this motivate the stakeholder, to read and sponsor you to further investigate the issue, This is the thing that normally I try to explain to students. Then they can write better problem statement. This is my
Correct.
sharing. Okay.
Correct. Very good. Thanks, Captain, for sharing. Actually, that is very, very true, right? And actually, what they would do is they would their problem statement will actually be based on the variables that you're actually going to use, right? And they will actually provide that. Yes, I agree with you, right? So let me just.
Prof. Sudi, can I have just one question?
Sure.
Okay. Normally for problem statement, for PhD level, is there any so-called minimum or maximum problem statement that they need to address on?
Actually, no. Dr. Tan, actually, no. They just have to have the problem statement needs to be broad enough where you will be able to get at least minimum. Actually, I prefer maximum of 3 research objectives from that problem statement, because once the problem statement is already there, then it's our role to actually now pick it up and say, okay, right, this would be what is the research objective. So like, for example, let me share here. One of my PhD students, right, she wanted to look at technology adoption in the Sichuan province, right? So Sichuan province is actually in Western China, right? So what she was telling me was the technology adoption by farmers in Sichuan province was actually very, very low. Yeah. And so for that case, I told her, give me statistics to support that. Okay, so she provided. So like in terms of access that they had, the amount of revenue, that means e-revenue that they actually got from selling on e-commerce platforms and all that was actually very low. So she gave me that, right? And then, so that was the first objective. Then the second objective was, she said, one of the key reasons why this happened is because the government actually puts more support for Eastern China, right, instead of Western China. So Western China actually gets less of government attention and so on. So government policy support is more towards Eastern China. So I said, okay, so find data to actually show that. So that means I said, find in terms of the amount of investment which goes in. That means government-based investment, or even like private investment, which actually goes in terms of getting that infrastructure done. So show in terms of between Western China and Eastern China, which is actually more. Right. So if you see, Dr. So it means the problem is there. So, and then she said the other one was in terms of internet connectivity. So I said, okay, so look at what is the speed. So that means, well, Eastern China, there was a lot of them, they were already having 5Gs, but Western China, some of it is actually mountainous areas. So access is actually difficult. So if they want to now use satellite transmitters, right, then it becomes a bit. So the whole idea is then, so when the student has this is a problem. So then we link it and say, okay, so now let's write your objectives, right, based on this is actually the problem. Yeah. So the students, most of the time when the student comes to us, they sort of know, right? But like what Captain was saying, they focus more in terms of, oh, okay, I want to look at my DV is the issue. Okay, what is the DV? What is the internet connectivity? They focus more on that. Yeah. So Dr. Tan, I hope I've answered your question. I know I was a bit long-winded, but I think it is one problem, but we must ensure that for each of the objectives we are developing, there is a story or a narrative that the problem statement is actually providing.
Okay, understand.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks.
thank you, Prof. Sudi. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, yeah, I'm unable to move to my next slide. 1 minute. Let me try again. Okay. So when it comes to refining the problem statement, what I tell my student is literature review. So in terms of the importance of where they look at, I will tell them literature review will be the final one that you look at. So in terms of which is important, I say look at reports. look at data, right? Because your problem statement or a problem or an issue that the country or the province or whoever is facing is only will be shown in reports, right? So I said, focus on reports first, right? Official government reports, local reports, international reports, right? McKinsey, Deloitte reports, those kind of things, right? Census or data. So whenever students are providing information to us, I would say, okay, if you are telling me that, okay, that, so like in the case of my student, so my student said, oh, okay, you know what, the Western China province is actually very much poorer, right? Less attention. So I said, okay, show me data, right? Show me GDP, show me income level, right? To actually support this information. So census and data is important. And then finally is where you support with literature review, right? So meaning like, okay, if their policy supports are not strong enough, this you can actually get from literature, right? Internet connectivity is a problem. Then look at it from a literature review perspective to get that information. Yeah. So the guiding, especially when it comes to problem statement, right? This will be the different steps or the different guidance that I would give my students. Yeah. Some reason I'm not able to. Sorry, yeah, very, very sorry. For some reason, it's. Let me try this again. I just wanted to also touch on part of the research process, especially with regards to literature review, right? Guiding students in terms of telling them the importance of literature review is key, right? So from the literature review, it allows the students to put the research questions or objective into perspective, right? They're able to find which theory or which methods to actually use, right? Literature review is also used to support their theoretical framework. So reiterating some of these points with our students is actually key, yeah? So our role as a supervisor will actually be to recommend core databases. So example, tell them about Scopus or Web of Science or Emerald or Science Direct, right? So tell them to go in and how to look for those documents, yeah? But one of the things that I think which our students are not aware is also about predatory journals, right? I think it's important for us to guide them in terms of sharing the list of the predatory journals. Yeah, that means telling them that if you have got these kind of journals, right, articles from these kind of journals, please do not take from here, yeah, or do not even publish from there, because I know we have had cases where students not knowing it have actually gone and published in this kind of journal. So I think it is very, very important that we as supervisors also, when the students come to us and say, hey, you know what, I want to publish in this particular journal, for us to say, okay, hold on, have you checked, right? Go check on that list, right? Go and find what is the impact factor for this journal, right? Is it worth publishing here? So please go and do that, right? Because I think one thing is, of course, the student itself, we want to avoid the student to publish in this, but you see a lot of times when the students are publishing, they would put the supervisor's name as a co-author, right? They will be the main author, we will be the co-author. So if our names are going to be there for articles in predatory journals, right, that doesn't also reflect very well on us, right? So I think this is actually very key in terms of for us to avoid or to guide our students in the better way. Yeah. Okay. Also to guide students in terms of how to encourage reading. So based on themes, for example, so organize your literature based on key themes, concepts or variables. Yeah, I will share with you a template that I normally give my students in terms of how, when they want to collect the data, right, how should they actually put this down. Yeah. One of the things is also about how they are writing it, right? So many times, if you look at it, what they will do is they will just cut and they will just paste, right? Or they'll just do minor modifications. That means they will just summarize the article, right? So they will take exactly from there and say, oh, this person said this, right? But what we want to help our students do is also synthesize that. So he said, hey, okay, so you're putting down, so you have actually stated that these three authors have said A, right? The second author has said A1, the third author has said A1B, right? Well and good, but why is this related to what you are doing, right? So synthesizing it, I think it's also important. So guiding the students in terms of, you don't summarize the article because then you're actually not adding value, right? The whole reason why the students are getting that information and putting it down is because it's related to their area of research. So tell them, okay, it's related to your area of research, well and good, but write it in a way where there is a purpose in doing that. Yeah. Now, get your students to summarize journal articles. So role as a supervisor for literature review, I would think one is summarizing journal articles in a proper way, right? And the second one is get your students to use citation management tools, right? So for example, I use Mendeley, and I actually just wanted to share with you all in terms of Mendeley as well. But before that, maybe I can show you about okay. This is actually a sample of literature review of articles, right? So this is an example that actually was done. So this was actually in terms of homelessness, right, in urban cities. So this was a study that was actually being done. So this is what I got my students to do, right? So you write down the article name, you have your main theme, and then you have your sub-theme, right? And then you have your author, date, problem statement, objectives.
Dr. Sudi, your
Yes.
slide is not shown.
Oh, sorry. Can see now?
Yes, can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is actually, so it's just an Excel format, right? But what this does is, so these are some of the information. So article, main theme, right? So in this case, the main theme. So here, when I do so main theme, the main theme that I have is all about homelessness. Okay, so all articles related to homelessness is the main theme, right? Then I get students to actually look at what is the sub-theme, right? So in this case, determinants, issues, and challenges, right? So break it down in terms of the sub-themes that the paper is actually addressing, right? And then look at what is the problem statement. So most of this information, I tell my students, you can actually get it just from the abstract itself, right? A good abstract will actually include problem statement, it will include objectives, it will include the theory, it will include the methodology, it will tell you what are your key findings, right? A good abstract will have all of these key elements. And I tell my students, if you cannot find it, then where do you actually look for it? So for example, problem statement, I tell them, in the first introduction session, you will find your problem statement. You will find your objectives in the introduction session as well, right? Your theory should either be at the end of your literature review or it will actually be under your methodology session, right? So guiding our students in that, because if not, so when we give our students this, so normally when I give my students this, I say this is a live document, right? So one of the things that I do, so remember I was sharing about how we have a Google Drive, right? So this particular template is actually put in the Google Drive itself. So all of the, whatever the student is doing, you can actually also look and start to ensure that the student is actually doing it. So if you want to do a random check, right, you can actually just go quickly pick up an article name and you can just double confirm that the titles are appropriate, that is not in a predatory journal as well. Yeah. So this is what I have. So theoretical framework or conceptual framework, methodology, domains of variables, analysis and results, comments concluding, practical implications, future research gap. If they're using a questionnaire, ask them to put, if there's a questionnaire there, yes, right? What are the questions that's been included? You know, things like that. So when the student then wants to do, let's say, for example, one of the objectives is you want to identify what are the antecedents or determinants of homelessness. So all you have to do is you just go and click only on determinants, and then you just have to look at all of those papers addressing determinants, right? Or the factors influencing. So it's actually easier for the students as well. So especially, so this is actually useful when we want to actually finalize the objectives. So normally what I will tell my student is, okay, you want to now finalize your objective. So your objective is here. Okay, let's now look at some of these papers and how they have written their objectives. What have they looked at, right? Because sometimes students want to do mediating factors. Student wants to do moderating factors. So you say, okay, let's look at past studies to see, have they used mediating factors? Have they used moderating factors, right? Because your theoretical framework or conceptual framework will also be there. So if the student is saying, oh, I actually want to use my TOE framework or theory, right? And I want to actually include, let's say, for example, top management behavior or top management, strategic management decision making, for instance. So I say, okay, no problem. Show me, pick up theoretical conceptual framework of TOE, right? Show me all the TOEs which are here, right? And then when I click on TOE, then I said, okay, go and look at the objectives. How many of these studies have looked at TOE using TOE? They have used moderating variables or mediating variables. So at least in this case, when the students are telling us something, we can actually verify very quickly by doing a filtering if we are using this particular literature review matrix. Yeah. So I have found this very, very useful. And I actually give this to my students within the first time that first or second time when I see them, I already give it to them. I said, okay, because you would need to start, if you're reading articles already, put that information in there, build up this thing, right? So you can tell your students, like, every time before you come and see me, go add at least about 20, right? So, and build it up, right? So this will actually be a live document. And that is why it is important to have this document in our shared drive, like a Google Drive, so that you can also go in and see how much the student has actually done, how much of sharing the student has actually done. Yeah. Stop sharing. Another thing that I also do with my students, and I'm just sharing this because there are a number of reference management tools out there, right? I'm sharing about Mendeley because I'm comfortable using Mendeley. It's easy to use. There are so many different ones. So if you're already using that, please share that with your students as well. Guide them a little bit in terms of how they would need to do that. But I thought I would just like to maybe take just share or sharing a demo in terms of how this will actually work. Yeah. So check my screen. I hope y'all can see my screen here. Okay. The Mendeley Reference Manager. Yeah. This is the one. She's going to take this and I will just place this in our chat group. I'll just place this link here. Okay. So this is actually my reference, this one that I have, right? So you can actually, so all references are here, but if you also want, you can actually subcategorize this as well. So my different models that I have. So that means when I'm doing a different paper, I want to actually have all of it in one area. I can actually just put it down as well, right? You can break it down and put it down. So for example, I just want to share. Okay, let's say I want to add a reference and I want to do this by importing a file. Okay, so I have actually downloaded this paper already. So let's say I'm going to take this, let's say open. So it is uploading. Okay, so it is done, right? So this is where it is. So just by uploading the paper or importing it into Mendeley, the reference will be automatically added, right? So I have got my abstract, right? If you want, you can actually add the DOI information, whatever you want, you can actually put it in, right? Manually, you can actually put it in as well. So if you want to change any of this, so let's say, for example, I just want to see if there is a DOI for this. Okay. So this one doesn't have a DOI. So one of the things is, if let's say, for example, here you only have this, other information is not here, you can actually add this information by including the DOI. You can actually do that. Yeah. So there are websites where you can actually go, just put in the name of this author and then get the DOI. So once you get the DOI, it will automatically be able to add this in. So let me see if I can find a DOI search. I find that. Okay. Yeah, 1 minute. Cross-reference metadata search also works. Okay. So if I go here, take this. Not sure whether it will be there, but we can actually just start finding. Sorry. Yeah. Please bear with me. Yeah, I'm just cross-reference. So Okay. So in this case, so there it is, the first one. So I'm just going to take this. So for DOI, I will just take right up to 10. So normally it's 10 point something something, right? So I'm just going to copy this. Okay, I'm going to go to my reference manager and I'm going to go here and I'm going to say add DOI, right? I'm going to put this in. I said, okay, update reference. So it will be updating my reference metadata, right? So there, all of the information will automatically be put in already. So once you put, so if you don't have, so all you have to do is just go find for the DOI number and it will help to put that data in. Yeah. So this one of the reasons why the reference manager is also important is you can actually get students to have that information. So I find this useful as one way to actually fight ChatGPT because like all these fake data, the fake papers and so on. So like I will actually ask the students to say, okay, show me, right? So I will ask them to open up Mendeley, store every paper, you store it in Mendeley, you show me. All right, so randomly I'll pick up whatever paper and I say, okay, show me this paper. Where is this? Okay, what information did you take from this? Right, so let's look at the citations and so on. Yeah, so Mendeley, the other thing that Mendeley also does is it can actually help you because it's also a reference manager. All right, so you can actually have the Mendeley site. So if you look at this, this is actually a Word document, right? But I have this icon here, which is Mendeley site, right? So let's say, for example, I'm writing something, just going to write some gibberish, yeah? Okay, then I said, okay, I want to cite this. So I'm going to Mendeley site, right? And I'm finding for that paper, right? So let's say I'm saying, okay, do I have? Yeah. So I'm going to say, okay, so this is the paper. So I'm saying insert citations, right? So in this case, the citations are automatically inserted. So it also helps the student. So the student doesn't have to, so you tell the student, right? What is the format, upper format? So the student will then be able to say, okay, right? This is the one, the system, the reference manager will automatically do that. Yeah. And the other thing is also, if you now want to put in your reference, you want to insert your reference, right? So I said, okay, insert bibliography. Okay, continue, right? So this will happen. So in this case, this is the particular paper and this will be the reference. So I only have to do it once because then subsequently, so let's say I want to add another reference. So I said, okay, Mendeley site. Okay, I want to find, okay, so let's say I'm finding, okay, I'm going to put in Osman, all right? And I say, all right, sorry about this, cancel. Say, okay, let me, I want to put in this, okay, so changes, okay. So all of this is here. So the minute you do this, then immediately you'll have all of it updated, right? So insert reference will only need to happen once, yeah? So I find Mendeley very, very useful, right? And normally I will, within the first few sessions that I have with my students, I already inform them, please use this as well, yeah? Okay, I'm just going to take, I'm just going to stop just to ask if there are any questions anyone wants to ask, anything to clarify.
So today just now you mentioned about the predatory release, like that
Yes.
one is something like is always updated one, or let's say how we know whether maybe the earlier one they take out. Can I do so?
Can.
Or then later they add in some other what they call other journal. So how
Correct.
we verify whether that particular one is whether it's under predatory or not?
I think, Dr. Nan, there will actually be the bells list, right? The bells list that they have, right? So that one, they will actually update it. I think it's done annually, it's actually done, right? But if I'm not mistaken, I remember Dr. Jasmine had actually shared with us recently. She had also shared with us a list that Australia is also including. That means there is a list that Australia. So I think what we can do is we can actually reach out to Dr. Jasmine for her to actually share with us the list, right? Because I think the bail list sometimes when you go and Google up, you will be able to find it, but sometimes it is not available. Yeah. But I remember Dr. Jasmine had shared this, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know whether Dr. Jasmine is in this session. Dr. Jasmine, hi.
Prof. Sodi, hi. Okay.
Ah,
Okay, regarding the list, the predictor list, right? Okay.
Mm.
So basically there are two lists that is mainly to inspect whether this is a predictory list or not. The first one is bell list that is available on the website. Yes, it will update regularly. Okay. So most of the time, right? Okay. Some of the journal earlier on, they are not classified as a predictory journal, but as the time go by, means that they violate some of those research practice. Like for example, they charge very high APC, or the frequency of submission is too frequent, like every month they actually accept, and then the volume of the article they accept is too high per issue. So some of this issue will actually cause the journal being flagged as a predictory journal. So another one is the Cabell list, and unfortunately Cabell list, right, is not open for everyone. This one can only be accessed through the institution. So that's why for this Cabell list used to be more accurate compared to Bell list, and it only can access if someone have the access to your W Australia website. So that's our library website. So that's why the best way, if your student have any concern, write to PGRC, we will help you to check on that. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jasmine. Dr. Tan, is it okay, Dr. Tan? Yeah.
Dr. Jasmine, that particular two list, is it the same or different?
No, some of them it can be like listed under Bell list, or some of them is only listed under Cabell list.
Oh, but we to make sure that our journal is not inside this two list lah. Am I right to
Yes.
say this?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof.
Thank you.
Sodi.
Thank you.
Dr. Tan, especially, right, Dr. Tan, if the students want to publish, right, because, our students have to publish papers, right? I think that one, maybe we can reach out to Dr. Jasmine as well for guidance. So when our students say they want to publish in this journals, maybe we can actually just reach out if we don't have access to the documents to check.
Sure.
Yeah?
Thank you, Prof. Sudi.
Okay. Okay. One of the things that I've noticed as well is the theories that students are actually using, right? They must have like, okay, so sometimes depending on the area, right? Most of the time for social sciences, the underpinning theory is actually very, very important. And it actually depends on whether the students are actually doing quantitative or qualitative, right? If it is a quantitative data and the quantitative data is actually primary data, then the underpinning theory becomes very crucial, because anything that is shown in the underpinning theory must actually be shown in the conceptual framework as well. Yeah. So, but let's say, for example, if the student is doing quantitative theory, but secondary data, right? So if it is secondary data, so let's say, for example, the student is now looking at, okay, Trump is imposing all of this tariff across the country, across the world, right? So, and then so you want to actually do this particular, you want to do a study in terms of how this is actually going to impact, let's say, poverty, or it's going to impact foreign direct investment flow, and so on. So those kind of things that will be, so let's say you're actually doing based on a development theory, for instance, right? Or you are looking at, let's say, a Keynesian theory, for instance. So if you're using that those kind of theories, then the theory is actually going to be a guide, right? Meaning that some of those, the kind of variables that you would need to consider, the kind of dependent variables, independent variables that you would need to consider. Now, actually, then you just have to ensure that it is actually covered, right? If you're doing a quali research, so if it's a quali, similar, right? Your theory is a guiding principle, right? Your underpinning theory is a guiding principle. But social sciences, one of the things that I've noticed is many of the students are actually using primary data, right? And they're using quanti and they're using primary data. So in those cases, the underpinning theory is actually very, very important, right? If the student, so for example, if the students have identified the theory that they want to use, right? Get them to source for the original paper to understand what is the base model, right? One of the things that I've noticed is the students actually, when they come up, they have a theory that they want to use, right? But when it comes to their conceptual framework, so if let's say the theory actually says you need to have, let's say, 5 key domains that you need to have. When we look at the conceptual framework, sometimes they don't have, right? They have just cherry picked. So let's say you must have this 5, let's say, but they say, oh, I don't want to take 5. I just want to take only 2, right? Then they'll put only 2 and say, okay, this is what I want to use, right? So if those kind of things, explain to your students that you cannot do that. Yeah. One of the experience that I have had where I initially started supervising is my student was actually using the UTAT model. And for the UTAT model, you actually have this thing where acceptance and adoption. So sorry, just take some water. So the student, so when the student said acceptance, I had actually said, okay, go ahead. But the UTAT model is actually about adoption, right? So when for proposal defects, the examiners actually highlighted and said, no, you cannot. You cannot use this just for acceptance. You actually have to use this for adoption. So we must advise our students, if you're using a particular theory, it must be used in the full context. It cannot be used partially. That is one. The second one is you must make sure that you are going to now use the most updated. UTAT model has already got the second version. Technology adoption model has already got its third version, right? So when you are doing it, ensure that you have your original model, and then whatever addition that is already been done, that means this is been widely practiced. This is the theory that we're actually using. Then we actually have to advise our students to actually use the full one, right? I think my third point I've already explained, right? So use all the variables or domain from the original or updated model, right? So sometimes the student will come to us and say, hey, look, I am looking at this journal article. This journal article only has got 3. So if this article got 3, why can't I use 3 as well, right? Tell them once you have already finished publishing, you want to take 3 and you want to publish a paper, please go ahead. But it is okay for a journal article, but it's not okay for a PhD thesis, right? For a PhD thesis, you need to use your full underpinning theory. That's important. I've also seen cases where they said, do not blindly follow the findings of any articles, right? Tell them to verify the content, right? So for example, sometimes when you look at it, right, we know for a UTAT model, we know that it actually has to have, let's say, 5 of these domains is what it is normally there, right? But suddenly the five is not there, right? They are saying it's a UTAT model, but the 5 is not there. They're actually using all different, everything is different, right? So then in those cases, students will sometimes say, no, I'm citing from this particular paper. That is when you tell them, okay, go check on the quality of this paper. Is it an impact factor, right? Is it a predictory journal, right? So it is for us to, so because sometimes students are they're quite desperate. They want to use something and they are trying to convince you in that case, right? So I think it is important for us in those cases to actually to guide them and tell them, no, some of this will not work, all right? So there are areas where we most likely we need to be very, very firm with them, right? So using your underpinning theory, identifying your underpinning theory is actually important, right? So one of the things that I do when I look at the students is, okay, so for example, just now I shared with you in terms of my, I'm sorry, am I still showing my PowerPoint slides or am I showing my full screen, yeah? Sorry.
PowerPoint slide.
PowerPoint slide, huh? Okay.
PowerPoint.
Okay, wait, I just share my. Okay. So like, for example, right? So when it comes to the underpinning theory, right? This is where I will go back to the literature review metrics and I will say, okay, let's look at what are the theories, what are the different types of theories that is there, right? So let's say, for example, you say, okay, you want to look at the theories of planned behavior, right? So I say, okay, so how many of these articles have actually used this, right? So for example, if there's only been one article which has used this, so I'll ask them, do you want to use it, right? Don't you want to use a theory which is more relevant, that means which has been used by more authors, right? They have actually used that. So that is why I feel like this template, this literature review matrix template is actually very, very important because it sort of like guides the students and it's just not simply, oh, I'm as a lecturer, I'm a supervisor, I'm just telling you, you follow. It is not that, right? It is actually to guide them and say, okay, this is what you have done. Let's go back there. So if you're wanting to tell me, oh, this is a particular theory I want to see, okay, fine. Let's go back and let's see where has this theories been used, right? So in this case, if I'm looking at, okay, so the underpinning theory, right? If the underpinning theory is being used by so many authors in this particular way, okay, we agree, right? We will take that on, yeah. So I think our role is actually, so the whole concept is how do we get them to do this process, this research process, right? Explaining to them the research process is what we are actually doing, yeah. So conceptual framework, we need to tell them that the conceptual framework needs to align with their theory, right? It needs to align with your problem statement. It needs to align with your research objectives, your methodology, your data analysis. It needs to align with that, yeah? So okay, I have seen cases where the student will actually have one particular theory that they are using, right? And then they will say, oh, we have another second theory to support, okay? If you are using secondary data. You're using quantitative secondary data, all right? And you are saying that you are now using two theories to support. Well and good. That can be done because objective one might use one particular theory, objective two might actually need another theory, right? But when it comes to the case of primary data and when it's quantitative methodology, what I have noticed is, and this is just based on my experience here, is that most of the time it's actually just one theory that you are actually using to develop your framework. Because if you're using more than one theory, remember, the minute you use, you say, I'm going to use a theory, you need to use the theory from the start to the end, right? You cannot say, okay, for example, I'm going to take UTAT model, right? And I don't want to take the whole thing. I only want to take the part on acceptance only I want to take. And then I claim I'm using the UTAT model. Cannot, right? So especially if you are supervising a student who is who is doing the methodology is a primary methodology using primary data and quanti, right? You must advise the student, you cannot, right? Or there must be justification, right? So if the student insists, no, I want to use, I said, okay, sure, no problem, right? You go back to your literature review matrix and you say, show me which are the papers which have actually used both of these theories together. Do you have examples of that to support, right? If you have examples like that to support, no problem. Let's follow that, right? So I think in this case,
Prof. Sudi, can I share
sure.
something regarding conceptual framework about
Sure.
the underpinning theory?
Sure.
In fact, for quantitative, based on my understanding, okay, if there is two type of underpinning theory, one is using as a model, okay,
Yes.
another
Yes.
is abstract theory. Okay, if you are seeing the model as a theory, if the model got 5 variable, that means you have to use the 5 variable. If 6 variable, you have to use 6 variable. You cannot take out one of it. If you want to explore, you can put it one more. That means say that you want to enhance the model itself.
Yes.
If you want to have the two theory, I mean maybe another theory inside there. If the theory is another model also, that means all the mini variable in the model you need to use also.
Correct.
You cannot take half on it unless you use the abstract theory, like say RBV, which is
Yes.
I mean it's very general. Then you can say
Yes.
that okay, I want to add another theory to support another objective. This is
Yes.
my sharing. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Captain. And I think we are actually aligned in what we are thinking, right? So that means if you're now saying objective one, you want to use one theory, objective two, you want to use another theory, you can use it like that, provided you are going to use it from the start to the end, right? That means you're from the point where you say this is my independent variable and my outcome is this is my dependent variable. I want to use that whole thing, no problem, right? So this one, like I mentioned, is very, very crucial if you're using the methodology that you're using is a methodology of quanti primary data, right? But if you're using quanti secondary data, not as important because then your theories become your guiding principles, right? You're not exactly forming your framework based on that. That means it's a guiding principles. But even that, you must make sure that if, let's say, for example, if I want to now look at my growth, let's say I want to look at the growth theory, I'm using the solo growth model. I must follow the growth model, Solo's growth model. I need to use all the variables which are there, but I can add more variables if I want, right? So I think one of the things, because I think this sharing is actually coming because I have noticed cases where students don't actually take everything. They actually now say, oh, I actually have got three different theories I'm using for my conceptual framework, right? I'm taking this, okay, I'm putting this in this particular theory. Then I'm taking another variable from another theory, and then this theory I'm using, right? So if they're using it like that, no, it's not. It shouldn't be allowed, actually. It doesn't make sense to claim I'm using the theory when that means a theory means that I'm actually testing something. That means I'm testing a relationship between A and B, right? So if I only have A, how can I say that I've tested this theory when B is not there, right? I mean, so that is the logic behind this. Yeah. So our role when it comes to conceptual framework is for us to guide students to extract the core concepts from the literature that aligns with their problem statement and objectives. Yeah. So for us to show the students, okay, if you have already done your literature review, where do you look at, right? So that means go back. So one of the things that you can do is you can go back to your literature review matrix and you can actually say, okay, if I am actually looking at this, so I say, okay, let's look at your theory. If you look at your theory, then I will look at my domain and variables, right? If this is a theory that you're using, these are the domains and variables. Okay, let's look at what is the key variables that has been used here, right? So it is our role to guide the students in terms of where to look for this information as well. Yeah. Now, another thing that we can also do is we can propose the use of a concept definition table with references. We can actually do this as well. Okay. Yeah, I don't know whether this is. Control click to follow link. Sorry. This is another table. Sorry, can you all see this Excel table that I'm showing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is another table that you can get your students to do, right? So meaning they come up with the construct and variable, they have the definition given, okay, and which are the authors, and the relevance to your study. That means get the student to put it down, okay? So like in this case, okay, technology adoption, okay? So this is directly linked to which objective, okay? Who has actually done this? Who are the authors that have actually done this? So if you have this, then you can actually go and then say, okay, pull up the paper. Let's discuss this paper, right? So that in that case, it's actually more targeted as well. Yeah. So the literature review matrix that I showed earlier was actually very broad, where for so many different things we can actually use this. But this one, if we want to now finalize on the conceptual framework, we just want to make sure that the conceptual framework is actually right. That means the construct that they are saying that they want to use, right? So get them to put down all the constructs that they want, right? And then say, okay, list down the authors, and then tell them to tell you which is it related to. So when they're talking to you about the relevance of the study, they might actually now tell you that, oh, okay, look, this is actually linked to my objective 1 or objective 2, because remember, in my problem statement, I want to do this. Yeah. So when we do it that way, then it becomes much more targeted as well. Yeah. So this is another example of a table or a matrix that we can actually use as well. Yeah. So so what when it comes to conceptual framework, just make sure our role is to ensure that the students can justify why they have identified a theory for their research. So if they have an underpinning theory, we say, okay, good. So justify why you want to use this particular theory, right? And the justification actually comes from the literature review matrix. So it's for them to actually show and say, look, all of these papers, look at all of these papers. This is what they're actually looking at. If it's adoption, technology adoption, this is the theory that they have all used, right? Ask them to critically evaluate as well, right? So for example, when it comes to technology adoption, for instance, there are many theories, right? Get them to tell you, why is this theory a good fit? So why should I go with UTAT and not TEM, right? Or why am I not going with TOE, right? Because my literature review has actually said people have used these different theories. But why are you saying that of all of this, why are you choosing UTAT, for instance, right? Why do you think that is actually more relevant? So get them to convince you that this is actually good. So remember, what we are actually doing in this process is we are actually trying to tell the students, preparing the students, right? So that means when they go for their viva or they go for their proposal defense, they already know, because we have already asked them the questions. They have already defended that to us already. Yeah. Review their framework alongside their research questions and hypothesis, right? So when they have, so remember, we have our research questions, we have our research objectives, and we have developed the research, help the students develop their research objectives based on their problem statement. Yeah. So we already know problem statement and research objectives, research question is linked already. Okay, that one we have already ensured at the beginning, right? So now when we look at the framework, we ask them the question, okay, you want to do this, right? So now, for example, your problem statement says, your problem statement doesn't mention anything about, let's say, for example, infrastructure, right? It doesn't mention anything about technological infrastructure. But in this particular thing, you actually have, that means this will be something additional that they're doing. So let's say, for example, now they're saying, oh, I want to actually moderate this with technology infrastructure, right? So you tell them, okay, but why do you want to moderate this with technological infrastructure? How is this related to your problem statement, right? How is this related to your research question, right? Ask them that, because students actually get very excited when they see, like, especially like another study has used this. Okay, I want to take it and I want to put it in, right? But as long as that is not the base model. So let's say, for example, if technology infrastructure is one of the variables in the core basic underpinning theory, no problem. We can take that. But if the students are now introducing this, they are saying that, hey, this is my additional contribution, right? I want to do this, right? So no problem. Again, question goes back to problem statement, goes back to research objectives. Yeah. So ask your students to justify whether the framework helps them answer their research objectives, right? If all the objectives are represented in the framework, it closely tied, right? So we have seen the importance of this three, right? Problem statement is linked to our research objectives. That how do we test these research objectives? We test it using our conceptual framework. So it has to be linked, right? Now, so tell them to justify each construct and link in their model using citations. Okay, so that means just now how I shared with you the table on the, ask them to have a definition, research definition table just now, right? That Excel table. Tell them to justify each of the construct, right? Sometimes students will come and say, no, actually, I think, right? That's their the keyword that they will use, right? I think this is important, right? So whenever student tells me, I think, I will stop them there and I said, I am not interested in what you think, right? Whether you think it's important or not is not the point, right? So the gut feeling, right? Oh, this one is, there's a connection, right? No, everything should be backed by research. You want to put something in, no problem. Show me the research. right? Is this in your construct? Do you have people who have done this topic? Have they used this? Have they used it in a similar theory? You show me, all right? If that's the case, well and good. We can actually do that. Yeah. So conceptual framework, finalizing the conceptual framework in that case. Yeah. So my last slide. So in summary, I think as supervisors, one of the things that we need to do is we need to ensure before we sign off on that form, right? The students will send us a form saying that they want to go for PD or Viva. So before we sign off on that document, it is our role to ensure that the students are ready, right? We cannot say, oh, it's okay lah, let the students go, right? Let them go and let them present in the proposal defense. Let's see what the examiners are saying. Then we will do the changes, right? That should not be the case, right? Because remember, at the end of the day, it is our name which is affected, right? So if I'm sending a student there who's not ready, right? It is like I am sending a soldier without any weapons, right? I'm going to send, go and fight, right? We shouldn't be doing that, right? So I think, and I think if I'm doing my PhD, I wouldn't want my supervisor to go and say, "Lantak lah, you go and do lah," right? You go, you kena, and then you come and then we whatever feedback we get, we take it and we improve it. It should not be that way, right? I think it's important. I think that's one of our key roles to ensure that our students are ready, right? Before. So that means the signing off of the document should actually be something that we are going to think very, very hard before we sign off. Yeah. I think this we all do, going through the report or draft and providing feedback for the students, right? So going through each line by line, right? Giving the comments, right? Guide students on providing clear and accurate response to feedback from examiners, right? I actually have recently one of my students had gone for proposal defense. This is from my previous institution. And she has actually come back with a list of the examiners have actually said she has passed with minor, and then so she's supposed to now give the corrections, right? So I actually sit down with her. I get her to come. Like for example, on Monday, I've actually blocked my time from 8 o'clock right up to 1 o'clock because I know that we need to go. So she has already written it, but I think I need to go one by one. So I know sometimes it's very, very time consuming. It's actually very, very painful, but I think from a student perspective, if the student has actually put in that effort, guiding that student through, like, so each one of the comments, okay, if you have written this comment, okay, show me where it is. Does it make sense? Okay, can we change it? Can we do this? Right. So I think that is actually very important. Yeah. Remaining professional at all times. I think that is actually key because especially when it comes to internal, when we are playing the role of internal examiners or we are playing the role of chairmen, for instance, right? So we might need to have to comment on the work or what is presented by the supervisors are actually our friend, right? But I think one of the things that we would always need to keep in mind is at that point when we are playing the role, whether we are the chairman or we are the examiners, that is the role that we are playing, right? I am not a friend in that role. I am not a friend to A or I'm not a friend to B. In that role, I am actually an examiner and I want to do justice to this particular student, right? And I think if having that in mind, so because I know I have had over the years, some of my closest friends have come as examiners for my students and they have bashed up the students, right? And I've only said thank you, right? Because they were able to point out things that I was not able to catch because you see, like when we are supervising, right, we are so much into it already because we have seen it so many times. So sometimes we are blind to certain things. Okay, like for example, right, when my student went And when it's supposed to be, the student has actually said acceptance, using this theory and stopped at acceptance. Cannot be acceptance, it has to be adoption, right? So this was actually one of my friend, an external examiner, who has come in and pointed that out. And it was like, for me, it was like, oh my God, how could I have missed that, right? But yes, it happens, right? So I think we are taking it as that, because when the examiners are coming, they actually, whatever feedback that they're giving is actually to improve, overall improvement, right? So with that, I am going to stop sharing, and I have finished my sharing. I would love to hear feedbacks from you all. I would love to hear some comments about how you do things, whether you're aligned with this, or do you have like different practices that you can share, where maybe we can all learn together with this one. Anyone? Anyone wants to share about any difficult cases that you have supervised? Or even if you have any questions that you have. Okay. I will. Is it possible to combine two theories into one theoretical framework? Okay. Mahathir, I think it is possible. It is possible, but I have seen this most likely in the case of the model itself actually becomes very extended. So that means if I'm drawing the construct, right, the first half of it needs to be explained using one theory, and then the second half of it need to be explained using another theory, right? I have seen this in livability model, right? So one of the PhD students that I've supervised actually had this, because the student actually, the initial theory was actually in terms of satisfaction, right? But the second part was actually in terms of policy implications and so on. So in order to be able to include the satisfaction and the policy implications, right, the student actually had to merge two theories, right? So yes, I have seen this, right? But like I said, it has to be from beginning to end. That means the whole theory is something that you would need to use. So, but yes, it can be done. Or alternatively, like I said, if you're not using, you can actually use the theory. That means objective 1, you're using one theory. Objective 2, you're using another theory, right? But most of the time, when it comes to, if it's quantity, primary data, I don't encourage my students to do that, because you can just imagine the literature review that they have to do, right? The literature review needs to cover for two theories. And then even the empirical evidence that they need to collect needs to cover for two theories. So that's actually quite a bit of work actually they would need to do. So normally, my advice for the student is, that's when they come up with a very broad scope, I try to narrow it down for them, and I tell them, okay, so if it's possible, of course, sometimes the students are they're very adamant. Like this particular student who wanted to use the two theories, right? She exactly knew what she wanted to do when she was actually a very mature student, right? So I said, okay, go ahead, right? But I think our role is to tell them there's going to be difficult, right? And then let them make the decisions. Thanks, Mother. Thanks for the question. Okay, so quali and secondary can use, I have seen, yes, So I have seen this being used. So secondary one, so like I have seen, so this one is from when I had supervised a student, and this was from an economic topic. So for economic topic, quali, and it was a secondary data, right? So this person has actually used two, right? It has actually used two theories. So yes, definitely, that has been done before. Thank you, Nishanta. Can you advise how to handle situation if the supervisor and student, if both are working colleagues? That is actually a bit of a challenge, actually. But I think before, right, before you take on a particular student, right, I think it is good to establish expectations, right? I personally have supervised colleagues previously in my previous institution. I have actually supervised two of my colleagues, right? It was manageable to supervise simply because I was more senior to them, right? So when you are senior, and then of course, you see my gray hair, right? So my gray hair does help. So like in this case, it was actually easier. So like I would advise, if you're now going to take somebody who is a colleague to be, just make sure that if it is a good friend, I will advise you not to take the person as your supervisor. If the person is much older to you, recommend somebody else to supervise, because there can be challenges. There can be, because there are expectations. Of course, from the onset, if you can actually now align and say, look, this is my role as your supervisor. Sometimes I would need to tell you this kind of things. If you're okay with this, well and good, go on, right? So I think it's about establishing things earlier on the onset itself, then it will actually help. I hope that helps, Nishanta. And quanti and primary is usually one theory. Yes, Stephanie. So normally I have seen, okay, advisable if it is quanti and it's primary, advisable if it is one theory, more manageable. Okay. Captain says, not really, depends. Quanti can have 2 or 3 theories if the model is complex and meeting the requirement of the use of theories. Yes. So, Captain, again, I think it's very, very important to actually tell the students, because you see, if you're looking at, you are using 2 theories, 2 or 3 theories, can you imagine how the framework is going to look like, right? Because once it is quanti and it's primary, the expectation is I would want to see the outcome of that particular, that whole theory I would need to see, right? So if you're now looking at, I have got 3 theories, right? So if I'm actually looking at 3 parts of this, right? So that means the first part linking up to the second part, second theory, linking up to the third part, right? So I don't know, if a student actually comes to me with that, I will actually sit the student down and I'll telling him, okay, are you sure you want to do this, right? Yeah, it's true. It's manageable if it's only one theory. You're right. Okay, Stephanie, for bachelor levels, so like for bachelor levels, right? If it's a final year project or something like that, I think our expectation is not as high as what we would have for a PhD, right? So like a lot of the sharing that I've given now, Stephanie, is more for at a PhD level, right? Bachelor's, or even at a master's level. Okay, let's say for example, like for us, I can share if it's like an MBA. The expectation is actually not as as heavy as what it would be for a PhD, because like a PhD, it should actually be in terms of like it's going to run for 3 years, right? So that the expectation will be you need to put in that much. But like for masters, okay, like for our MBA is about 1 year, right? Or 1 year, 4 months, 1 semester. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So should be enough to use conceptual framework for bachelor's, I think, yes. Yeah. Very simple conceptual framework, very simple ones, right? And then get them to run some very simple analysis. Yeah. So research desk exposure for them. Yes, that's true. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Questions has actually been really, really good. Welcome, Kajit. Thank you so much. So I have nothing more to share, but I'd just like to thank everyone for making the time. Thank you so much for being here. So I hope my sharing has helped as we move forward as a university and as we grow. Hopefully we'll be able to move ahead together for and help the students. Thank you, Nishanta. All right. With that, shall I pass the session back to Hazim? Hazim, are you still here? Right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.